Hi there, everyone. We continue this week with Parshat Toldot, and I want to study a Midrash with you that takes place right after Yitzchak finds out that he's given the bracha that he intended for Esav. In fact, he gave it to Yaakov. He was fooled to think it was Esav, but it was Yaakov all along. And at that moment, he's beside himself. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak says, Bal lekalalo. Yitzchak wanted to curse Yaakov at that point, presumably to undo the bracha that he had just given him, because it's not Yaakov Yaakov was not the intended recipient of that blessing, and he wanted to undo it. So Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God came to Yitzchak in that moment as he's ready to just curse Yaakov and say, that's not for you. God should, take away the things that I just gave you. God says, Hizaher, be very careful, Yitzchak. Shimat mekalalo, lenafshecha at mekalal. If you curse Yaakov, you're really cursing yourself. De amart, because didn't you just say in the bracha you gave to him, Orerecha arur, those who curse you will be cursed? That's God saying, you can't undo this. It's the way it's supposed to be. Now the Midrash, and I encourage you to, again, read the Midrash on the link below on Sefaria. It talks about how there are certain things, three things that in the human experience that are not in our control: the eye, the ear, the nose, things that we see, we smell, we hear. They just happen to us. We don't always choose the things that we hear, or the things that we smell, the things that we see. But there are three things that are completely in our control, the Midrash says, quoting Rabbi Levi, and that is the mouth, the hand, and the foot. We control where we walk, where we don't walk. We control what we do with our hand in the sense that will we stretch it out to give tzedakah? Will we be stingy? And we also control what comes out of our mouth. Will we speak kind words, or will we speak hurtful and hateful words? And the Midrash at the very end says that each of these three things that we do control, God ultimately can't, if a person merits, b'shashu zoche, when a person merits, Kadosh Baruch Hu oseh otam birshuto shelo birshuto. He'll take the things that we do have in our capability to control, and he'll take them away from us. And the example given for the mouth being taken away, God can take the mouth away, that what comes out of our mouth can be controlled by God, is this story. Hapeh, how do we know the mouth can be controlled by God? Because Yitzchak says, Gam Baruch Yiyeh. After Esav confronts Yitzchak and says, this is terrible, how could it be? At the end of the day, Gam Baruch Yiyeh. Yitzchak says, I can't undo the bracha. He will remain blessed. Because again, the Midrash paints the picture that God tried to intervene, Yitzchak tried to intervene and curse, and God said no. And this was God taking away Yitzchak's mouth from being able to curse. That's the Midrash. Now, the question that one has to think about here Yitzchak wanted to curse and undo the bracha. Why not just say, this is divine intervention? And he ultimately comes to that conclusion, but until God says you can't undo it, Yitzchak seems like he wants to undo it. So, what did he have in mind with this bracha that he was intending to give to Esav? That he really wants to go back on it. And I want to point out to everyone, and I've pointed this out in the past when I've spoken for Parshat Toldot in our shul, the bracha that was intended for Esav here had nothing to do with the continuation of what Avraham started, the Birchat Avraham, which is explicitly given to Yaakov later on before he leaves the house as he heads to Lavan. That's when Yitzchak says, you will be the continuation of the descendants who are going to inherit this land, and all the traditions that Abraham's children are supposed to inherit. So what was the purpose of the bracha for Esav, that was intended for Esav, if it's not about being the continuation of what Abraham started? And the Sforno explains that what this bracha was all about was, Esav, you will have from the dew of the heaven and the fat of the earth, you'll have rov dagan v'tirosh, you'll have so much grain, new grains and wines. You'll be wealthy. You'll be rich. People will serve you, Yavducha amim v'yishtachavu lecha leumim, and they'll bow down to you, the nations of the world. You'll be a world power. Have a gvir la'achicha, and you'll be a gvir for your brother. You're not going to necessarily be so terrible to him, but you'll be a gvir. He'll look up to you. You're going to be the one in power in the world. And they'll respect you. V'yishtachavu lecha b'nei imecha. And Yaakov will respect you. That was the bracha. And the Sforno explains that Yitzchak's intent here was that it was in Yaakov's interest to have some degree of dependence on Esav, while at the same time holding on to the Birkat Avraham, which meant the land of Israel, and everything that heritage, comes along with. Because if you have political dependence, then Yaakov's descendants would not have to deal with the geopolitics. They wouldn't have to deal with the things that come with the challenges that come with that. Now, I want to add on to what the Sforno is saying. I think you could take it one more step. I think that Yitzchak didn't want Yaakov to also deal with amassing the wealth that can come with the challenges that can come with amassing tremendous amounts of wealth and power. Don't deal with that. Let Esav deal with that. You'll focus on the Torah. That's what Yitzchak is saying. You'll focus on the spiritual tradition. That's it. That's all you got to do. And when he finds out that Yaakov took that bracha, and now Yaakov is going to have to deal with geopolitics, wealth, power, he says, this isn't going to work. You can't have power and wealth and at the same time be the bearers of the spiritual tradition. Impossible. I have to take it back. I have to curse Yaakov so he doesn't have that. He can't have those things. It won't work. And God says, shh, it's done. That's what's supposed to happen. Yaakov is supposed to have wealth, success, be involved in the geopolitics of the world, and also be the bearers of spiritual tradition of Avraham. And Yitzchak says, okay, he accepts it. Fine. You know what? I guess Yaakov can make a tremendous difference. If he holds on tightly to his spiritual tradition and also influences the world in a positive way with the wealth and with the geopolitical situation, they'll have their say and they'll make a difference. I guess that could really influence other nations and other people and inspire them maybe. But what does Yaakov do when he gives Esav his bracha ultimately? He puts in a fail-safe in the system. What was Yitzchak worried about? Yitzchak was worried that wealth, that power would corrupt the Jewish people. They would forget about God. They wouldn't think about God. And so the spiritual traditions of Avraham would fall away. And so what bracha does he give Esav? He says to Esav, similarly, by the way, you'll enjoy the fat of the land and the dew of heaven above. You'll live by the sword, v'et achicha tavod, and you will serve your brother. But, vayak asher tarid, when the situation gets to such a place where your brother is not so connected anymore spiritually, he's going a little bit, there'll be times when he's weak. Ufarakta ulo me'al tzavarecha. You'll break the yoke, his yoke, from your neck. Particularly when I think, my idea is here, when they don't follow the ways of God. When they don't follow the ways of God and they don't attribute any of their success politically or financially to God. How many times does Moshe in the book of Devarim warn the Jewish people, you're going to be wealthy, God will give you so much. Don't forget God. Don't forget it came from God. Don't forget your spiritual being and your spiritual tradition. And I think this is what Yitzchak envisioned. Yitzchak envisioned initially that spirituality can't go along with wealth and power and whatnot. And he's saying, actually, God is saying, oh, actually, that's the ideal. That we should be involved in what's going on in the world. We should accrue wealth. That's okay. We can enjoy those parts of the world. It shouldn't have to take away from our spirituality. But Yitzchak ultimately knew, though, in giving that bracha to Esav, that it is a challenge. It is a challenge sometimes to have the wealth, to have the seat at the table in the world of geopolitics. And Yitzchak builds in the failsafe and says, Esav will keep you in check through the generations. If you forget God and you forget his ways and you don't attribute your success to God, well, Esav will always come to remind you and get you back on course to understand that you are the bearers of the spiritual tradition of Avraham that you do need to spread to the world. And you can't forget it. And you can't forget that responsibility. Thank you so much. I'll see you on Thursday.